Welcome to Altered Mates, a philosophical podcast hosted by Alejandro Tuama and Tobias Penno, two mates fascinated by altered states. Stay tuned for a conversational journey through the murky depths of consciousness, psyche, and the human experience. To find out more or to support the podcast, please go to alteredmates.com. We hope you enjoy the ride.
Hello everyone, Tobias here, one half of Altered Mates. Before I share our introduction to this episode, I'd like to spend a moment reflecting on best practices for safety and well-being with psychedelics. Alejandro and myself have been engaging in ceremonial psychedelic use for over 10 years now. We have sought out experienced and trusted guides and are always careful to put in place systems that safeguard our physical, psychological, spiritual, and emotional well-being. We do not suggest that psychedelics are appropriate for everyone, but for those who do choose to use them, we strongly recommend great caution and great care and consideration for these psychological, emotional, as well as legal factors specific to your context. The safest way to undertake a psychedelic journey is in legal contexts, under careful supervision from experienced and qualified guides. Okay, moving on to this episode. So here we share with you a conversation between Alejandro and myself preparing for a psychedelic journey. In particular, a 5-gram hero, quote unquote, dose of magic mushrooms in the darkness in a ritual manner. We discuss the value of balance between the sacred and the mundane, how when we get lost in the daily grind, psychedelics can at times help us to remember something of the sacred. Down the rabbit hole we fall, from wandering sadhus to California bliss ninnies, a meandering dialogue. We compare our commitments for physical preparation and dive into our sometimes complex relationship with alcohol and how psychedelics fit into that. Here we get into our intention. What is it that we are searching for? What do we hope to gain or glean from our upcoming magic mushroom experience? A philosophical discussion ensues as we traverse the nature of the soul and the self, how our current readings and intellectual landscape might unwittingly interfere with our experience, the role of psychedelics in creative pursuits, and we touch upon the relationship between psychedelics and eros. Pay close attention, because our next episode will be the integration conversation, where you'll get to hear how these intentions did or did not come to fruition. Okay. That's all for now. Take it easy, dudes.
So, I guess there's a couple of questions that we can ask, which is like, why are we doing this ceremony? Why now? And then, what's the intention for each of us going into it?
Yeah.
I also thought, like, what potentially are our influences at the moment?
Yeah. Well, for me, the reason now is that I guess it's that dilemma of balance between the liminal spaces and like magic places and the sense of beauty and awe that can come from a psychedelic experience, and in contrast to that, to the mundane sort of day-to-day automatic living of life. And so I feel like I've been pretty heavy in the automatic mundane day-to-day living, and I want it's time for a little bit of that broader perspective, that kind of magic that a psychedelic journey can give me. So I'm ready for that.
Yep, me too. I think that brought up some terms. You know, like what do we call it? I think like the sacred and the profane. I think that came up when I was doing the rites of passage training. That's what Anna Rubinstein talks about, and his has nothing to do with psychedelics, but it's just about those two ways of living, that there are these sacred moments that are marked by ritual, whatever it is, like standing around the fire, or like secret men's business, that kind of stuff, versus the profane or the mundane, I think is a good word as well for it, the day-to-day,
the grind.
Mm-hmm.
And the grind is all that more bearable if you've had the moment of sacred beauty. You can wake up in the morning and you drink your coffee, and it is like it is itself a mystical moment, or it carries an element of that.
Or that idea that we can bring the sacred into many of the mundane.
Yeah.
So it's like we can turn the morning coffee into a ritual.
Yes.
And that's something, I've thought about that it would be great for me in my life to do that more. And that now I think of like those Japanese tea ceremonies, where it's just like it's your morning tea, but it's fucking sacred.
I in fact have on order at this very moment a whole set of matcha tea, and they've got these like epic big matcha tea bowls, which are they're huge, and I thought that obviously that they had just really big cups of tea, but as it turns out they don't put much in it. Okay. And it's more about the fact that you can cup it with both hands and feel the warmth of the tea before you drink it. It's a whole process.
And maybe one thing that like a psychedelic experience can give is like it's a reminder of the sacred, and then an encouragement to bring that into daily life more where possible. Yes,
that's exactly what one, or at least one of the reasons that I want to do the ceremony this time is that it's to, I guess, readjust the balance of sacred to mundane. A little bit in favor of sacred at the moment.
As in to bring it more into the favor of sacred.
Yes,
because it has the balance has swung the other way.
Yeah,
and I think it's not necessarily, we don't need to have like negative connotations for the mundane, because it's also really important. Like I've been through, I'm in like a mundane cycle, but I've needed to do that in order to have a place to live. I mean, we've both just moved into new places, so that requires a lot of like logical, rational thinking. Where am I going to live, and then where's my couch going to go?
Got to do this job. Got to teach these kids. Got to write, research, see clients, exactly. That's why I use the word balance, because it's not about one is better than the other. It's about getting the balance right. And I love the quote. I couldn't tell you who said it, but they were talking about ritual processes, not just psychedelics, and how if you have too much of the mundane and not enough of the sacred, then life will crush you. But if you have too much of the sacred and not enough of the mundane, then life will burn you. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. You're kind of bringing yourself more into chaos, more into the deeper meaning-making sort of perspective of life. But if I did that every day, if I took a big dose of mushrooms every day, I'm sure I would have really beautiful and meaningful experiences, but I would be a complete mess and not be able to function in my life.
Yeah.
And then the sacred wouldn't even really be as beautiful anymore, because I wouldn't have a stable platform of like conscious awareness from which to appreciate it.
Or even you might run out of money and like not have a place to live.
Yeah, then I'll be homeless, and I'll become the kind of homeless, like.
Or it's not like an ascetic.
What's those guys in India that just cruise around?
Yeah,
and they don't eat, or they eat very little.
Ascetic.
Asceticism. Right. Asceticism, yeah. But they've got a particular name in India. I can't remember what they're called. But yeah, they're all
wandering so-and-sos.
Sadhu. A sadhu.
Okay,
yeah. And they just wander.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they actually do it well. I think I would have a bad time.
I remember Robert Anton Wilson talks about California bliss ninnies.
California bliss.
Ninny. Ninnies. Yeah, I think it was a term from probably the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
But it's like for those acid heads who do it like every weekend.
Right.
And they're just, and it sounds great. But whereas, you take an acid every weekend or, even more than that. And you're just fucking feeling like God all the time.
Yeah.
On a cloud.
That actually doesn't sound too bad.
But I think it's like, how long can you make that last?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I think it's a constant renegotiation with myself around what's right for me in the moment. And when I first started doing psychedelics, the rate at which I could do them and still gain a lot from it and be grounded in the day-to-day of life was higher. I could do more.
Yeah.
And even then it was still, there were months between them. Maybe there was times where there was one every weekend for like 2 weekends in a row every now and then, but it was still rare. Now it's getting more distal. Mm-hmm. It's like once every few months, every 6 months that I could really do a big experience.
Yeah. So for me, what am I trying to say? Yeah, I feel like a few times, this happened to me last year, like halfway through last year, and then I felt like it's just happened again, where I've got lost in the mundane, or this feeling of almost losing myself.
Yeah.
So where I fall too deep into my work as a school teacher, too much in the mundane, not enough of the sacred. But I don't realize that's happening until there's some experience that'll break me out of it. So I had it last year. It was when we went on artist retreat.
Yeah.
Where I was totally separated from my normal environment, as in we went down south. Yeah, drove away, and then I kind of, after a few days of being creative and being around cool people, I was like, holy shit, I forgot about this. I'd lost myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you forget. I think that's part of it, and that's part of what this process is it's a remembering for me often of that which has been forgotten, which is the sacred.
Another factor for me for why now is that I have taken a break from psychedelics. So, and this I talked about in the challenging experiences. After a challenging experience with DMT, realised that I needed to take a break from it because it scared the shit out of me. And so then the question is, well, why take a break? Why not do more psychedelics? Like if it's bringing up something challenging.
Well, based on one of your challenging experiences that you spoke about, there is merit to that idea.
As in of like just taking
pushing
more
through. Yeah, well, the example of the 2 nights where the first night was horrible, the second night, most meaningful experience of your life.
That's true. This is ayahuasca in a ayahuasca healing center.
Yeah. So that was held in a container where the facilitator knew that what had happened on that first night obviously was just the beginning of a process. And so whereas that other challenging experience that you talk about sounds like the way that you did it was a little bit too nonchalant with the medicine. And so
when I was in this world, I was in the world of the mainstream, taking a quick break from it, opening up something that I couldn't contain. There was no container for me. So your pause was about the acknowledgement of the need for a better container. And now we're in a space where that container is there. So the pause is, not necessarily about you being unable to process or go through those experiences, but more about making sure that you have
a proper container and sufficient space, and that you've prepared your body and your mind properly for the experience.
So I'm glad you said that, because that's another important point that often comes up for me with psychedelics, is that it'll highlight for me what is not right in my body. Like I've felt that before. Like, so using ayahuasca, this was one of the key messages. It was like, hey dude, your diet's shit. Look at all this purging that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I've had it with the mushrooms in a slightly different way as well, where I'll feel, if my diet's not great, then I'll feel it in my stomach, and it might not be purging, but it'll just be discomfort.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that feels so good. And so I guess it's like when I take these, take psychedelics, take medicines like this, makes me more sensitive to everything. And one of the things I'm more sensitive to is how my body feels. And so I know, it's like I know if my body's not feeling that great and my diet's not great, I know that if I take psychedelics, then that's just gonna be highlighted. So I think, I should probably clean that up a bit.
Yeah, good thing you've been doing a 30-day cleanse.
Yes,
recently.
I have been.
Yep, I have as well. Although I did make some. I did make some breaches in my 30-day schedule, but the gist of it has been kept, and the quality of food in particular has been pretty good. Yeah. But I did drop the no alcohol.
So
rule.
what was your challenge then?
My challenge was,
what was the preparation?
Introduce intermittent fasting, so no breakfast and only eat from midday, sticking to basically a pretty solid rhythm of only eating like baked oats with fruit for that brunch, and then like a vegetable oriented dinner with minimal meat and healthy, no, like low fat, low sugar, low salt, and that I have more or less stuck to, so that feels really quite good. And in doing that, I have started to heal like my gut, because I was having some pain, some discomfort, and that's kind of gone away. So I think that's a sign that I'm on the right track with that. But I was also going to give up coffee and alcohol, and I have broken that a few times. So that is not good. But I'm going to still completely restrict alcohol in the last, at least several days leading up to it. And I'm down to 1-shot coffees, so I'm going to cut that out probably as of tomorrow, so that, at least a couple of days I've gone 0 coffee. And the rest was just sticking to the regime of exercise and things like that, which has been okay, not perfect. Yeah.
Mine was simpler and more humble. Is that the right word? Less ambitious, probably. I just wanted to cut out alcohol.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's been a ongoing problem. I don't want to say problem. Challenge in my life, managing the amount of alcohol that I have.
Yeah.
So that's feeling good, and I haven't broken that, and it's feeling good. So I guess the question is, why? Why do we cut alcohol?
Well, I mean, for me, alcohol is an anesthetic in a lot of ways. It can be a lot of fun, but I often use it to de-stress. And so the reason that I broke my rule this time is because I had something that for me was extremely stressful come up. Yeah. To the point that I left Perth, went down south, spent some time by myself, and I did have a few drinks. I wasn't drinking heavily, but I was drinking just to kind of cut out a little bit. And so there's like a anesthetizing disconnection that I seek from alcohol, which is helpful for coping, although I guess not a long-term useful way of coping. And so, for me, psychedelics are the opposite. They're fundamentally about connecting and enhancing sensitivity. Alcohol disconnects and dehances sensitivity, and so they're kind of like poles apart. So it's useful to cut alcohol out in order to be more sensitive and more in tune with my body and
Yes.
not avoiding things and all of that sort of stuff. Plus, there's just the straight up toxicity of alcohol in the system, which I think when you become sensitive to your body on a psychedelic becomes much more visceral to you and does not feel nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a cleaning up so that you can feel the alcohol, feel the psychedelic effect properly and engage with it more meaningfully.
Yeah. I definitely have that kind of, the alcohol is good to relax for me. It also has, if I'm stressed out, if I go have a couple of beers, it's like a way for me to be like, actually, it's fine. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
A way for me to feel good about my life, about and what's going on, and I feel like I can cope with it. I can manage all these things. Like all of a sudden, all of the problems don't seem as insurmountable.
Yeah.
That's in the moment. But then, unfortunately, I think what also comes with that for me is a feeling of, I can let go. So I can let go of my problems, but also let go of a lot of other stuff as well. That it's like I might think, these issues are easy. Hold on, let me try and rephrase that.
No, I know. I think I know what you mean. I've actually thought about this, that like one of the primary functions for me for alcohol is like, I have so many things in my mind and in my working memory that I'm constantly holding: projects, people, priorities, career, life, everything, all of these things. And like, if you imagine that my mind is at the center and there's all these like lines which are cast out to all of these different projects and things that I'm prioritizing, that alcohol will come along and sever the cord with all of them, which releases me of the responsibility and the like stress of trying to hold all of these things in my mind, but it also cuts my contact with them. So I kind of forget about things. I let go of things. And so, so it feels like there's a cutting which is happening.
Yeah. And I'll let go of my worry about work, but I also let go of wanting to do push-ups in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that.
Exactly. And even just with the worry of the work itself, letting go of the worry, I'm worried because I care. And alcohol is helping me to not care. Yes. And so, but the reality is that I do care, and I worry for a good reason. And so, it comes at a cost, a cost which, for the most part, is not worth it for me. So that's why I want to reduce alcohol.
And then there's the hangover.
Plus that,
which is which is all that. That's the physical hangover, and the more we do psychedelics and the less like volume of alcohol we have, the more sensitive we are to it, the worse the hangovers.
Yep.
And all of those worries just come back.
Yep.
That's like
that's right.
Like, hey,
we're still here.
Yeah.
And I find also and I'd be curious what other people's experiences are, but I find if I am drinking 1 or 2 glasses of wine a night, and if I do that for 2 or 3 nights in a row, like I won't feel hungover anymore, and it doesn't really affect me in as tangible a way as like a so-called hangover, but my reflection in a more like longer duration is that my sense of pleasure and joy in life is just flattened or flatlined from that. So I think it's not a good drug really for a lot of the time.
Yeah,
it's an occasional food, or it should be an occasional food.
Yes, that's what I would like to transform my relationship to, and maybe I need this solid break from it now, just to break the cycle, and then look at reintegrating it in a more occasional. And it's not like this is the first time. Like I've done this many times. It's like here we are again.
Yeah,
which is frustrating.
Yeah,
but that's being a human.
That's the act of trying to balance these things. Okay, cool. So we've done some good prep. We know why we're here. I have another reason for wanting to do a journey.
Yep.
Which is connected to some reflections that I have been making recently. So at a journey we did quite some time ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is before my partner moved to this city.
Okay.
And at that time, I was reflecting on the kind of changing sense of identity that I was feeling, and how, like, at that time I was like withdrawing from my friends a little bit, because I knew that my partner was about to move cities to live with me, and that we would need to spend some time getting us right before I then expanded back into my social network.
Sure.
So I was like grieving this kind of like intangible loss of social connection.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened, and of course all of that was like amplified and weird in its own way over the last 2 years. And then again recently I reflected on this migration of identity at a ceremony that some friends organised for the changing of the seasons halfway between the equinox and winter solstice. Yes. And how I'm still in this uneasy, awkward phase where I'm like, I'm not really sure who I am now in this relationship and who I am with my friends. And that's connected in part to the relationship, but it's also connected in part to disidentifying with drinking culture, disidentifying with some older friends, again, I don't know. That confusion around like how I prioritize my time, because I love all of my friends, but I don't want to drink as much anymore and like eat out and do those kinds of activities. I prefer to do some more wholesome activities. And so negotiating who I am in the world a little bit, and just feeling this slight sense of unease and like slight sense of disconnection from friends, and like finding myself in situations where I want to spend time with friends on an evening, for example, but there's some kind of barrier which is like, no, don't do it. You could just stay at home and chill and rest or like learn something. And so there is still this underlying uneasiness in all of that I would like to ask for some help or clarity around. Like, I guess I'm seeking not just a return and remembering of the sacred that we talked about before, but a kind of a reconfiguration of self, or a clarity around my configuration of self that will help me to be more content in my day-to-day life, and not worrying that I need to take some sort of action to reorient myself socially in the right way or something like that. Yeah. So some clarity and healing, I guess, around all of that.
So that kind of brings up the idea of like, what is the self? Because another thing is that we've been reading a little bit about Jung's ideas around the self, and that, but kind of at what the psychedelic experience might connect us to. And so when you're asking for guidance or vision or something like that, there's the question of what are you who are you asking that guidance from, and what is it that we connect with when we connect with the psychedelics? I'm not saying that there's a potential answer to that, but what comes to mind is the mushroom itself. I don't know if we mentioned that's what we're going to be using. And that whether that is an entity that has some vision for us, or that we're connecting with another part of our self or our mind that maybe is not available to us in our day-to-day mundane lifestyles.
Yes. And I guess there is no clear answer to that. I've certainly had experiences which, feel like there is an intelligence which is outside of myself, which is guiding me.
Yep.
Many times with mushrooms, and, whether they are cognizant and like have a will of their own and a intelligence that drives them like we do, I don't know. But certainly the combination of my brain with psilocybin equals some particular quality of intelligence which is not normally available to me.
Yep.
And that quality of intelligence seems to be very good at like bringing forth the implicit, bringing forth the unconscious, the underground, a bit like the mycelial network under the trees, connecting me to material that is hidden normally from sight. Yeah, and also there is that sense of being connected to the web of life more so than normal, which is kind of why I guess part of why I'm asking for that help around the self, because I feel like there might be some wisdom in the perspective that I might be given from the mushrooms of the bigger picture of the web of life, which myself is embedded in, if there is such a thing as the self in the first place, which is a whole other
I like that
question.
Mentioning of the big picture. That's something that I'm looking for as well. And I guess, like that's implicit in one idea of vision, where one way we talk about visions with psychedelics is like literally seeing things. Like I had a vision of a jaguar.
Yeah.
Although my vision, I never had like a jaguar. They were always weird, way weirder than that.
Oh, okay.
But then also vision as in like sight, vision for the future. So like seeing pathways for myself. And so it's almost like I've got this one aspect of my brain or mind which is focused on the day-to-day and, what do I need to accomplish today? And then there's another part of me, maybe, of my brain that's got its finger on like the big picture.
Yeah.
That where I fit in with my community or where I fit in with the world, where I'm headed, like what path am I actually on now? Is that where I want to be? Have I missed something? It's almost like zooming out. Like if I'm in first person, I want to zoom out into third person, look down on myself and be like, oh, dude, fucking get off that path.
Yeah.
Or just tweak it. Tweak that a little bit. We need to head
this way a little bit.
West. Yeah. Due west. Fucking whatever.
Yeah. Pull the sails in a little bit. If you're the captain of your ship, maybe you need to veer this way slightly. Okay, this is another discussion, but the metaphor of self as a ship, well, let's park that. I think it's great. Okay.
I want to talk about that later.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I love it too. I'm the captain of my ship. Another dimension for me is mystical experience, and that's because we've been talking about that recently in an episode about mystical experiences. I would love to invite the possibility of a mystical experience in there. And I'm open to anything, whether it's a mystical experience of the mushrooms as a sort of mystical entity or a mystical experience of no self, like ego death or God consciousness or oceanic consciousness. Whatever it is, I'm open to that. And I would love, I'm inviting that into this experience as well. And maybe that could connect quite well with that other intention around self and healing and getting clarity. People often talk about that with ayahuasca journeys. I wrote about this in my dissertation, that one of the common themes that people talk about being therapeutic for them is the reconfiguration of the self after the dissolution of the self. So it's like the self gets torn apart in the experience, sometimes quite viscerally, like people actually have visions of being physically torn apart by creatures and things like that. And that's horrifying and difficult. And then they get to rebuild it and fashion themselves in a new light. So maybe those two themes are connected or could be connected. I could potentially have a different experience of self, which then helps me in that way.
I've had kind of a recurring experience with the mushrooms around dissolution of the self, where I kind of dissolve into a puddle and then slowly weave through different animal states. This is where the salmon comes from. So I end up on the floor as a puddle, and I can't move, and I just feel like I've been dissolved. And then we'll slowly be able to get a little bit of movement back, and then that's where the little winding, tossing around like a salmon comes through, which is something that I've experienced before. Experienced salmon consciousness. Until slowly by the end of the night I've pieced myself back into human form,
Yes.
Which is slightly different. It's not the same as like totally disintegrating who I am, but it's like there's parallels.
Yeah. Yeah, it sort of seems like those are two very similar things on a spectrum. One is the far end of the spectrum is the complete obliteration of self, which I guess is what W.T. Stace refers to as the final kind of mystical state that you can have, the final peace, enlightenment or something like that. But then somewhere along the lines is all these different kind of iterations of that where yourself is modulated, changed, or But I guess it is more complicated than that, because something that I'm thinking about now is the shamanic, like ayahuasquero, South American animistic worldview, where every creature of the forest and the world has a sense of personhood or is endowed with a sense of personhood.
Yep.
And that we live in this kind of cosmological economy of souls where like every thing or being which has that endowed personhood is living in constant transaction with everything else. Yep. There is no such thing as an eternal soul or like something which endures beyond particular beings. And we're living in this constant like interactional web. And within that you can embody different creatures, like they talk about shamans becoming jaguars and like experiencing the energy. Or a crow or a salmon. And that through that, I guess there's maybe some wisdom that can be learned or gleaned.
We can see what the crow sees for a moment.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know how we got here. Mystical experiences and and models of self, and I'm very curious about, because we've been reading about Jung's archetypes of the shadow and the anima, and I'm very curious if that something like that could be revealed to me through this experience, but I'm not really sure how to frame that as an intention other than just to approach it openly and surrender to what might come. Perhaps in the integration we can talk about ways in which the shadow or anima might have presented itself to us.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to recognize the material that we're taking in and see if it bears fruit. Yeah. Because another thing, so I've been reading June, having watched the latest film, which covers about the first half of the book. Yep. So I've been reading that, and so I know that's stewing around in my conscious and unconscious mind, and I'm wondering, if that will influence my experience at all.
What is your impression or take-homes or material that impacted you from June so far, which then obviously might impact your experience?
Yeah, so it's related to the spice. This substance that exists on the planet Arrakis, which is the planet June. There's this psychedelic spice that is mined, and in the novel, the spice is used for a number of things, but it assists with space travel. So it's like one of the substances that has made interstellar travel available or viable for human beings. Right. But it also, it extends your life, it expands consciousness. I don't know whether it comes later. I don't know the mechanism by which it makes space travel possible, whether it's just extending life or something like that. But what it's more focused on at the moment is the main character, this boy, I think he's like 16 or 17, about to become a man. He started to take this spice, and he enters this state where he can see his future, or he has visions for the paths that are presenting themselves to him. Yeah. And so he can see this one path that ends in jihad, basically. There's like going to be a holy war.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, I don't want that to happen. Yeah.
Okay. I'll be interested to see how that might come up
Mm.
in your experience, or just shape it,
Yeah.
those themes.
I guess another reason why I'm wanting to go into the psychedelic experience now is yet to recover a sense of the sacred, but also for creativity. That I'm kind of reaching the end of a phase where I've written a book, edited it, it's ready for publication, it should be coming out soon. And so I need to re-enter the creative phase because I've got a couple of other books that are works in progress that need my creative mind rather than my irrational editing mind. And so I want to kind of recover that part of my aspect of myself, which I've surrendered in order to do a good job at work.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
I need a certain amount of...
switch the right brain on a little bit more.
a bit of the fantastical, a bit of that.
That makes sense.
Recover that magic. There is also that I haven't encountered this.
Yeah.
But on the psychedelic experience, there's plenty of anecdotes of people having sexual experiences there.
Yeah.
And even having families there. That there are shamans who have like wives and children in that realm.
Yeah. Yep.
Which parallels with like some UFO encounter experiences where they're taken to another planet where they breed with aliens and have families there.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. I've heard about this, actually.
Yeah. Actually, I do remember on like my first breakthrough psychedelic experience in 2011 with ayahuasca, there were a few feminine entities that flowed in. Like one was like Trinity from the Matrix and one was like one of those blue avatars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't go to a sexual place, but in my mind I was like, please go to a sexual place. Like,
yeah, I've definitely felt ayahuasca having a very sexual energy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's sexual. It feels like ayahuasca puts me in touch, at least sometimes, with the erotic current of the earth, is what I've heard it talked about before. It's like you are born from sexual intercourse, there is this innate sexual drive, which is the same thing as life force energy, and it is what propels us all forward. And that force is very powerful and energizing and healing, and it's also suppressed. And it seems that in this culture anyway, it seems that ayahuasca puts us back into contact with that life force energy, which has an erotic quality to it, but it's very particular kind of erotic quality.
Yes, I've definitely felt that. Yeah, that it's not like sexual intercourse happening, but it's almost as though the whole of reality is that.
Yes.
That I feel like I'm in Eros or something like that. I'm just surrounded. It's fucking everywhere, everything.
Yeah.
The other thing that I remember is when I'm at that center, I was totally abstinent.
Yeah.
Abstinent.
Yes.
Abstinent. Yeah. And so there's no release of the sexual energy, so it's just churning around.
Yeah.
I have heard people talk about how like the ayahuasca is like jealous. She doesn't want you to.
Yeah.
It's like, you saved your sexual energy for me.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
That's why they say don't do it, is
Yeah.
because you won't have a good experience because she doesn't like it. She, quote unquote, doesn't like it. Yeah. I just remembered the imagery that I experienced when I felt this erotic current of the earth once, and it was like I could see it was almost like the vines of ayahuasca and the roots underneath them in the soil. And then so I had an image of the roots leading up to the vines coming up into above the ground. And from the very bottom of the roots, there was this like bulge in the roots that was moving, and several bulges that were moving. So if you've ever seen like the esophagus of a human being or any animal when they eat, the way that the food gets moved is through what's called peristalsis, where it squeezes these bulges along the tube.
Yeah.
I saw these bulges of like brilliant white light energy life force that was pulsing from the earth into the roots and then up into the vines and then into my body. And so I was getting this direct access to this life force energy pumping through me. And yeah, it felt very erotic. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's something as well, which we've now brought in.
Yep.
There's quite a lot of material to bring in. I might do that thing where I write it all down on a piece of paper and then burn it.
Yeah.
Just before.
Well, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Let's do that before we start. We'll do a little ceremony around that.
Okay. Cool.
Little magic ritual.
Yeah.
And then usually, just before the ceremony, my intention's like to kind of let go and be open.
Well, yeah, I think that's the symbology of the burning of the paper. Like, bring your intentions, get clear on why you're there, but then just before you actually have the experience, let go of it all, because it may not be what you expect, and don't fight it if it isn't.
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else? I guess one other dimension is that for me, that this is part of an ongoing apprenticeship with the mushrooms, or relationship and apprenticeship. So, one day I would love to serve this medicine for other people's healing journeys. And in my view, the best way to become adept at serving it for others is to have a deep practice and relationship with it yourself. So this is part of that learning.
Yeah, totally. I don't know exactly what my role is going to be moving forward. That's like an incomplete thought. But yeah, similarly, I totally agree. Anyone who's going to do that work needs to be master of it with themselves.
Yeah. And you might want to do that work.
Yeah.
In which case it's good in that way for you as well, but it's not an explicit intention at this point, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool. That's a wrap.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the episode. For more episodes or to support the podcast, please follow the link